Have you ever said, "It wasn't me," even though you knew it was? One part of you hit send, another begged you to wait. One part bought something at 2 a.m., another swore it was the last time. Who exactly is at the wheel when you're not? There's an old character inside you, hidden, persuasive, patient. It doesn't ask for permission. It asks for passage. It uses your voice, mimics your handwriting, and signs your name. And ironically, it almost always thinks it's protecting you. We've called it instinct, bad luck, fate. Here we'll call it by the name that both frightens and liberates: the shadow. It's not a demon, a trend, or the fault of the planets. It's the storage unit where you've thrown everything that didn't fit into the perfect picture: polished anger, expensively perfumed fear, desires you swore you didn't have. The world applauded your light. You learned to hide the rest. But the rest learned to drive. Think about the last time you judged someone harshly. Too arrogant, too showy, too cold. And deep down, something resonated, because that, in some way, is also you. The shadow is the mirror you avoid. What we criticize most in others is often what we deny most in ourselves. I met a kind, competent, good manager who only lost her temper when someone else on her team was praised. It wasn't malicious envy. It was the invisible child inside her screaming, "No one saw me when it mattered." She wasn't bad. She was just in the dark. And in the dark, we stumble. Psychology calls it the repressed unconscious. Jung mapped this territory almost a century ago. Ancient tradition spoke of shadows of the spirit. We're practical here. It's the truth you don't face, because you know that if you do, you'll have to change. And that's why the shadow is so effective. It operates behind your noble excuses. Procrastination disguised as "I work best under pressure." Control disguised as care. Constructive criticism that strikes like an arrow. Jealousy masked as concern. Relationships shopping and escapades used as anesthesia for a pain you'd rather not name. The rule of the dark room: what you don't illuminate commands you. This channel, article, etc. is timeless, because this force is older than your fears and more patient than your New Year's resolutions. It doesn't need to rush. It just waits for you to repeat the same script. But today, here, the plot changes. In the next few minutes, I'll give you 5 simple yet profound keys to recognize, engage with, and transform the shadow into strength, without cheap esotericism, without expensive self-deception. At the end, a 90-second ritual to begin integration and a challenge for you and our community. Will it hurt a little? Maybe, but purposeful pain is training. If you feel discomfort, great, a sign that the light is coming in. Breathe. Look inward with the courage of someone who truly wants to grow. The door is ajar. Let's start with the origin of the shadow, what you learn to hide to be accepted. This construction begins early, when a child realizes that some emotions receive hugs and others close doors. You smile, you get cuddles. You cry hard or show anger, and you get a scolding silence or distance. The brain does the oldest math in the world. If I suppress this, I'll be safe. Gradually, legitimate parts of yourself go into the basement. Anger, ambition, vanity, fear, sensuality, vulnerability. They don't disappear. They become automatic, appearing distorted and untimely like leaks. The shadow is this reservoir of impulses and beliefs that were exiled to maintain belonging. It's not morally bad, it's strategically ancient. 3 mechanisms cement this origin. First, shame. Explicit or implicit messages of "you're only lovable when." Second, conditioning. Rewards for certain behaviors, punishment or the silent treatment for others. Third, social comparison. You observe what's rewarded in your group and prune the rest. You grow up, become a professional, partner, parent, and continue playing the same game, only with more expensive clothes. You say, "I'm calm," when you've actually learned to swallow conflicts. You say, "I'm humble," when you fear claiming your worth and appearing too much. You say, "I'm detached," when you're actually protecting yourself from the risk of loss. The label is pretty, the price is high. What is repressed begins to govern behind the scenes. True story, name changed. Carla, 36, a marketing coordinator, excellent with deadlines, terrible with limits. At home and at work, she said, "Leave it to me," for fear of disappointing people. She was praised for being easy to get along with, but paid the price with anxiety attacks, impulsive late-night shopping, and rare outbursts that shamed her for weeks. In therapy, she recognized the childhood message, "Good girls don't cause trouble." She transformed legitimate anger into compulsive efficiency. When a colleague received recognition, the shadow leaked out in its most common form, relentless technical criticism. It wasn't about the colleague, it was about the exiled part demanding space. The turning point came when Carla named this part, "I am angry. My anger points to limits." In 6 weeks, 3 small changes, a schedule with non-negotiable blocks of time, 1 no per week to build relational strength, and feedback given on the same day in the first person without sarcasm. No one died. Her productivity went up and her late-night shopping went down. Notice the logic. The shadow is born as protection. It grows when you don't acknowledge it, and it dominates when you call it me. Integration begins with precise language. Instead of "I'm anxious," try "I feel anxiety when I'm silenced." Instead of "I'm jealous," "I feel afraid of losing when I compare myself." Instead of "I'm controlling," "I feel panic about the unpredictable." Replacing labels with emotion context reduces guilt, provides leverage for action, and illuminates the origin. The origin, almost always, is an honest attempt not to lose love. A practical exercise for today. A 20-minute emotional timeline. Take a piece of paper, make 5 marks: childhood, adolescence, early adulthood, a key relationship, today. At each stage, write down 1, emotions that were allowed; 2, emotions that were punished or ridiculed; 3, strategies you learned to survive; 4, decisions you made about yourself: I can't be X, to be loved, I need to be Y. Now circle 2 forbidden emotions that still leak out in the present. Ask, how are they trying to help me? The goal isn't to romanticize the flaw, it's to understand the function. Anger signals a violation of boundaries. Envy points to an unacknowledged desire. Vanity asks for recognition of competence. Fear asks for preparation. When you use the function, the symptom diminishes. A second, pocket-sized exercise for next week. A 3-question screening ritual every time a trigger appears. What exactly did I feel? 1 word. What is the automatic story my head told me? What would be a 2-minute action that honors what I feel without hurting those around me? Examples. Felt discomfort with someone else's praise. Acknowledge envy without drama and transform it into a plan. Write down a skill you want to develop and take a small step today. Felt anger. Instead of sarcasm, propose a clear checkpoint. Can we align expectations? I need X, I can offer Y. Felt fear. Plan redundancy, a checklist, a rehearsal, a request for help. Acknowledged emotion, plus planned action. Shadow with less ammunition. Finally, a reminder. You don't kill the shadow, you educate it. It holds vital energy, creativity, sexual power, courage. Integration is treating the shadow as an undisciplined ally that needs function and boundaries. You were born whole. You learned to fragment yourself to fit in. Now you learn to reunite the parts to grow. When you illuminate the origin, the leaks stop sabotaging you and begin to guide you. If this feels tight, breathe. The body trembles when it releases old armor. It's a sign that the door has opened. The shadow acts as a warped mirror. What you swear you detest in others is often what you can't tolerate in yourself. It's uncomfortable to admit, so the mind creates an elegant trick called projection. You displace outward what you don't want to face within. And suddenly the colleague isn't just confident, they're arrogant. The friend isn't just disciplined, they're a robot. Someone else's success isn't just a fact, it's showboating. The external mirror becomes laden with guilt that originated on this side of your skin. If the reaction is disproportionate, the mirror is talking about you. Here's a translation of the text, aiming for clear and accessible English for a broad international audience. Real story, names changed. Rodrigo, 41, an operations manager, complained daily about lazy people on his team. Rigid and an early riser, he never asked for help. His performance reviews were harsh, lax drive. After 2 employees left, management requested mentoring. It turned out Rodrigo held a long-held belief: if I rest, I lose respect. He scorned any sign of self-care in others because he'd buried it as a weakness in himself. When an analyst left at 6 p.m. to see his daughter, Rodrigo's blood boiled, not at the analyst, but at the inner child who once wanted to leave early and was ridiculed. When he acknowledged this, something interesting happened. He began to differentiate between actual performance and personal baggage. His team improved. So did he. The simplest test to identify projection is the intensity scale. The greater the disproportionate emotional response to an event, the greater the chance the trigger is internal. The second clue is repetition. If you always encounter the same type of unbearable person, you might be bumping into the same unintegrated part of yourself. The third is language. Absolutes like always, never, everyone, no one usually hide a specific pain that hasn't been voiced. The mirror doesn't lie, it only distorts until you adjust the focus. Field practice 7 days, 5 minutes a day. Projection journal. The moment someone irritates you, quickly write down 3 columns. Raw. Fact: what objectively happened without adjectives. Arrived at 9:12, interrupted twice. Automatic judgment: the label you applied. Irresponsible. Self-centered. Internal mirror: where does this live in me? Maybe you don't interrupt meetings, but you interrupt your own needs. Maybe you don't arrive late to work, but constantly postpone important conversations. This isn't about making excuses, it's about taking responsibility for your part and acting on it. Blind rage becomes useful information when it meets paper and pen. Another quick exercise is the counter mirror. With someone who irritates you, deliberately look for a trait you respect, however small. It could be courage, the ability to ask for what they want, or honesty. Name that trait and ask, how can I cultivate 5% of this in a healthy way? If the person is arrogant, maybe what bothers you is their ability to stand their ground. Practice objective boundary statements. To accomplish X, I need Y by Z. If a colleague self-promotes too much, maybe you need to practice data-driven visibility, a monthly spreadsheet of accomplishments sent to your manager. The goal isn't to become a copy of the other person. It's to distill the skill your shadow envies and integrate it without the toxic excess. Beware of spiritualized self-deception, the "I don't judge, I just observe" syndrome. You do judge. Everyone judges. The question is what you do after judgment. Do you project it outwards or transform it into an internal lever? A real-time micro-ritual helps. Breathe, identify the emotion, name it softly: anger, envy, contempt. Listen to the underlying need, limit, recognition, belonging, and decide on a 2-minute action that honors that need without harming anyone. You'll be surprised how quickly the mirror clarifies when it's given a function. Short, true story of quiet change. Sylvia, 28, a designer, was constantly irritated by authoritarian bosses. At the table, she spoke softly. Behind the scenes, sarcasm and passive sabotage ruled. She discovered her shadow was terrified of confrontation because at home, confrontation turned into shouting. She learned a simple 3-step assertiveness protocol, validating the other person's effort, making a specific request, and agreeing on a follow-up. In 2 months, she reduced indirect actions to almost 0. The authoritarians remained the same. The difference was that the adult Sylvia stopped hiding behind the frightened child. The mirror changed because the person in front of it changed. Finally, a practical commitment to the community. Choose someone who bothers you and write a letter you won't send. Without irony, thank them for 3 skills they possess that reflect your own desires. Then commit to 3 micro-actions to cultivate those skills in yourself, starting today. Then tear up the letter. The energy that would have returned as criticism becomes fuel for a more complete version of yourself. The mirror doesn't disappear, it aligns. And when it aligns, you stop confusing reflection with enemy and begin to recognize the shadow as a demanding coach who, despite their rough methods, wants you to grow. Self-sabotage is the shadow, speaking with your voice and using your hands. It doesn't arrive in a black cape, it arrives with reasonable arguments. Today isn't a good day. I'll wait until I'm ready. Just 5 more minutes. The brain loves efficiency. It prefers repeating the familiar to investing in the unknown. Add to this old beliefs, fear of judgment, and short-term biochemistry, addicted to micro-rewards, and you have the perfect machine to stall without seeming to stall. The script is almost always the same. A trigger appears, challenge, praise, deadline, an automatic story is born. If I grow, they'll cut me down. If I fail, I'm worthless. An emotion arises, anxiety, guilt, anger. The impulse tries to alleviate quickly. Procrastinate, attack, shop, scroll through your feed, and the very short-lived reward comes. Relief, dopamine, forgetfulness. The bill arrives later, with compound interest in the form of lost opportunity. Real story, names changed. Marina, 34, a doctor, studious, promising career. When the chance to lead a project arose, she said, "I need to prepare more." She prepared so much that the deadline passed, and the project went to someone else. The pattern repeated twice in 1 year. In therapy, the invisible sentence inherited from home emerged: those who stand out attract envy and become targets. Her shadow protected belonging by cancelling the step that would put her in the spotlight. When an opportunity came, her mind triggered endless secondary tasks, reading one more article, polishing one more presentation, adjusting the font of a slide, and finally said, "I didn't have time." It wasn't incompetence, it was a psychic immune system rejecting the foreign body of recognition. The turning point began with an internal contract change. Growing doesn't isolate me, it connects me with other people who are also growing. It sounds simple, but beliefs are commands. With the new code, Marina adopted 3 interventions, public commitments with deadlines to cut off the resource of silently postponing, a first rough draft delivered in 48 hours to weaken protective perfectionism, and a clear if-then for anxiety. If I feel the urge to polish endlessly, then I send it for review in 20 minutes. 3 months later, she took on a project leadership role. Did envy exist? Yes. But true belonging came from those who respect people who deliver. To dismantle self-sabotage, you need to operate on 3 levels. First, language. Name the mechanism, not the identity. Not, "I am a procrastinator," but "I use procrastination to avoid X." This opens up room for maneuver. Second, environment. Make the right thing easier and the wrong thing harder. Document already open the previous night. Phone out of the room. Schedule with visible blocks for those who work with you. Third strategy. Implementation intentions and micro-actions that fit into even the worst day. The brain doesn't fear the difficult, it fears the uncertain. Reduce uncertainty with minimal steps, short timers, and objective definitions of done is done. Practical tool, 5 minutes a morning, the shadow map. 4 fields on a sheet of paper. Expected trigger of the day. Probable automatic story. Easing action that usually pulls you down. 2-minute alternative that pulls you forward. Example. Trigger, feedback from the manager. Automatic story, I'm going to be dismantled. Easing, procrastinate, blame, prepare a defense. Alternative, ask for criteria, summarize expectations in a paragraph, and schedule a review. Do this before the day swallows you. You'll be training the muscle of meta-awareness, seeing the play as it tries to unfold. Another powerful tool for those who slip into perfectionism, the 70-30 contract. Define that 70% of the value of a delivery comes from 3 essential items: clarity, deadline, usefulness, and 30% is polishing. Forbid yourself from touching the polishing until you finish the 70%. It seems trivial, but it saves weeks. If anxiety arises, breathe a box breath, 4 counts inhaling, 4 holding, 4 exhaling, 4 holding, and ask, what is the next 15-minute block that improves one of these 3 items? Execute. At the end of the cycle, you will have a delivery that serves, and serving earns respect from yourself. A short history from another angle. Leandro, 29, a copywriter brilliant with ideas but chaotic in execution, was stuck in a loop of endless research. I introduced him to the first brick ritual. Open a blank document and write 3 core sentences in 5 minutes. A promise, evidence, and a proposal. Research only afterward. In 1 week, 7 first bricks led to 5 completed texts. What changed wasn't his talent. It was how he handled the shadow that disguised his fear of failure as a dedication to quality. Finally, a pact with you and our community. For 14 days, choose a small, inevitable goal with daily deliverables taking 10 to 15 minutes. Publicly track your progress, a public list, a group, or an accountability partner. If you fail, no drama. Restart the same day at half the effort. Self-sabotage loves absolutes and hates quick restarts. Teach your shadow that growth doesn't kill you, it organizes you. The shadow doesn't just live in individuals, it thrives in groups. In a group, identity becomes fluid and responsibility diffuse. You put on the uniform of the team, the company badge, the family banner, and something curious happens. The I steps back, the we takes the wheel, and the shadow gets a megaphone. Social psychology has been warning about this for decades. When anonymity, intense emotion, and peer validation combine, ordinary people do extraordinarily bright or terrifyingly cruel things. The Stanford prison experiment in 1971 spiraled out of control in 6 days because ordinary students internalized the roles of guards and prisoners with unforeseen speed. Dehumanization, humiliation, and psychological abuse became routine. The lesson isn't about hidden monsters, but about contexts that grant moral license to the shadow. Add to this the herd effect of social media, where faces become avatars and reflection time is replaced by clicks. And the collective shadow has a stage, lights, and an audience. A true story, names changed. A Brazilian startup, 40 people, an internal messaging channel. A client error created tension. In minutes, a passive-aggressive comment turned into a thread with 120 messages. Jokes about departmental incompetence and funny images appeared, then screenshots leaked. 4 people were fired, reputations were tarnished, and months of work were needed to rebuild trust. When the dust settled, they mapped what happened. Nobody wanted to be the annoying one, so nobody stopped the escalation. Those who disagreed kept quiet to avoid spoiling the mood. Leaders watched silently, fearing to appear authoritarian. The collective shadow took root in the space left vacant. The antidote began with a simple, courageous decision, naming the shadow. They created a 3-part crisis protocol. First, circuit breaker. Any member can use a specific emoji to freeze the discussion for 15 minutes, forcing everyone to answer 3 objective questions. What we know, what we don't know, what's the next check? Second, responsibility signature. Each critical message must contain a proposal and the person responsible. Problem X, I propose Y, I am responsible for Z in T hours. Third, slow room. Emotionally charged topics are moved to a 20-minute meeting with a moderator, open camera, and no irony. In 2 weeks, the channel's tone changed. Families and communities repeat similar patterns. The collective shadow creates scapegoats, the always problematic aunt, the unhelpful cousin, the always interfering brother-in-law. Each label represents the group's unaddressed pain projected onto one person. In the public sphere, this becomes tribes turning disagreements into dehumanization. You've seen it. They aren't just wrong, they are evil. That word opens doors to anything. History is full of examples of what follows. The antidote begins before the disaster. Pre-commitments and rituals that disarm triggers. Healthy groups create by agreement a deceleration code. 24 hours between impulse and posting, a ban on generalizations, you always, you never. The requirement to cite concrete data before a strong opinion, and an active invitation to the minority voice. Someone has to be the devil's advocate on a rotating basis. This isn't fussy, it's collective character engineering. Practical tools for teams, families, and communities. First, pre-mortem. Before launching a project or thorny discussion, gather the group and pretend it went horribly wrong. Ask, what brought us down? And let the shadow speak safely. List risks. Respond with small plans, limits, checks, veto points. Veto. Second, language contract. 3 questions before any accusation. What fact am I describing? What inference am I making? What clear request do I have? If there's no request, it's venting. If it's venting, it doesn't enter the decision-making room. Third, recognition rituals. The collective shadow feeds on a lack of validation. If the group institutes 5 minutes a week to celebrate specific achievements, not generic flattery, the impulse to attack due to invisibility decreases. Fourth role map. Every recurring conflict has unspoken roles. Savior, victim, persecutor. Naming them in real time, we're entering the triangle, breaks the spell. A short neighborhood story. A messaging group started circulating rumors about a suspicious young man loitering around houses. Photos, adjectives, fear. Instead of an improvised patrol, the local association called a meeting with protocols. The presence of the municipal guard, listening to the young man, he worked as a delivery driver, mapping schedules, adjusting public lighting, and registering volunteer neighbors to accompany deliveries at night. Fear was treated as data, not a sentence. The collective shadow this time didn't gain traction. Security increased. Potential violence was avoided. You don't control the world, but you can choose the pacts of the groups you participate in. The rule is simple and harsh. Without structure, the collective shadow commands. With structure, it provides energy and creativity without taking control. Think of emotional traffic lights for your team. Green, heated debate with respect. Yellow, irony and labels appear. Red, personal attacks, immediate pause, speaking turns, documented decisions with responsible parties and deadlines. Think one is none. If nobody has the function of holding the line, nobody holds it. And remember, social courage is different from individual courage. Sometimes the most heroic act of a group is a calmly spoken stop at the right moment. Confronting the shadow isn't an exorcism, it's internal HR. You don't expel a long-term employee who knows the building better than you. You redefine the job, give them a new badge, and establish clear rules of coexistence. The goal isn't to become a sanitized saint, but a whole human being, with anger that protects boundaries, ambition that builds, desire that moves, fear that prepares. The technique is less glamour and more method. First, name it precisely. Second, negotiate firmly. Third, nurture what needs care. Fourth, direct energy towards a purpose. Without purpose, the shadow becomes a fire. With purpose, it becomes a turbine. A true story. Names changed. Enrique, 45, a criminal lawyer, intelligent and respected, was losing clients due to outbursts in court. He swore it was hot blood and that pretending to be calm is hypocrisy. In reality, his shadow carried childhood humiliations with authority figures. With each harsher tone of voice, his body read danger and went into attack mode. He tried to suppress it, it only got worse. The turning point was a coexistence agreement with the shadow, written in his own hand and kept in the cover of his briefcase. Excerpts. Anger. I listen to you when I perceive disrespect. Your function, to warn. My functions: 1. Breathe for 20 seconds. 2. Ask for clarification. 3. Propose a pause, postponement if necessary. You don't speak for me, I speak. Sounds silly? It worked because it gave function, boundaries, and order of entry. In 4 months, 0 outbursts. The anger remained, now trained, like a guard dog that barks and sits when you raise your hand. The 90-second ritual is the practical heart. Step 1, stop, 15 seconds. 2 cycles of box breathing, 4, 4, 4, 4. Step 2, name, 15 seconds. 1 word for the dominant emotion without identity labels. Step 3, negotiate, 30 seconds. Ask what this emotion is trying to protect, limit, value, belonging, security, and write a bridging sentence like, I can honor this by doing X now. Step 4, act, 30 seconds. Perform a micro-action that changes the state of your body or context. Drink water, go outside, ask for criteria in writing, postpone an inflammatory text for 24 hours. The brain learns through action, not internal dialogue. Repeating 3 times a day for 3 weeks installs a new shortcut: sensation, recognition, micro-action, clean relief. The shadow loses its urgency to take the wheel. For those dealing with paralyzing envy, use competence distillation. When envy bites, avoid the 2 extremes, self-flagellation or attack. Write, what exactly do I admire that I don't admit? Transform the thorn into a skill. Within 72 hours, plan a 30-minute step to cultivate 5% of that trait. A short course, a mentorship request, a portfolio draft, a basic metric. Envy is desire with shame. Remove the shame and direction remains. For those suffering from diffuse guilt, replace penance with concrete reparation. 3 steps. Acknowledge the harm without drama. Ask what repairs the situation for the other person, not what comforts you, and schedule delivery with a date. Guilt paid with action shortens the shadow stage. Integration takes work. Emotion is physiology with a narrative. Before discussing heavy topics, ground yourself using the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 method. 5 things you see, 4 you touch, 3 you hear, 2 you smell, 1 you taste. This anchors you to the present and diffuses lingering negative emotions. In conflicts, replace "you are" statements with "when X happens, I feel Y and need Z." It sounds simplistic, but it rewires arguments. If a conversation sours, use the cooling off clause. I care about this, let's revisit this at 10 a.m. tomorrow. Postponing with a clear commitment is strength, not avoidance. Create a weekly integration chart. 4 columns. This week's leak, where your shadow took over, trigger, what preceded it, positive function sought, what it was trying to protect, new response, behavior honoring the function without the damage. In 8 weeks, you'll see patterns no sermon would reveal. Times, people, themes. Adjust proactively. Don't schedule tough decisions during your worst times. Don't discuss inflammatory topics via text. Don't drink when sad if it leads to a cascade of messages. The shadow thrives on favorable context. Remove the stage. Also prepare a relapse plan, because it will happen. When you slip, take 3 steps. Admit it in 10 words without justification. Repair what's repairable within 48 hours. Record a 1-line lesson. Next time I'll turn on the camera, ask for a break, submit version 1 in 24 hours. 0 drama, 100% continuity. The shadow feeds on secret shame. Daily light starves it. Finally, answer the question that structures this approach. Why do you want this strength? If the answer is vague, the shadow becomes an ego pastime. If it's clear, to protect loved ones, build something useful, serve with excellence, expand freedom. Each integrated piece finds its place. Inner darkness never disappears. But under direction, it becomes contrast. And contrast makes the image sharp. If you've read this far, you've realized the shadow isn't a monster out there. It's the sum of what you've pushed away, yet it echoes within you. We've seen its origin. Legitimate parts of yourself you silenced to fit in. We understand the mirror. What you condemn in others often reveals what you need to integrate within yourself. We've opened the self-sabotage box and seen how it uses noble arguments to delay your life. We've recognized the power of the collective shadow. When unstructured, we becomes licensed to harm. And finally, we've removed the mysticism and added method. Name it, negotiate it, nurture it, and direct its energy toward a higher purpose, with simple rituals that fit even your worst day. The truth is straightforward. You won't kill your shadow. You'll educate it. When anger becomes boundary protection, envy becomes a compass for desire, fear becomes preparedness, and ambition becomes commitment to something useful, darkness stops commanding and starts serving. That's what we're building here. People able to look into their own abyss without falling, so they can walk better, for themselves, their loved ones, and the world around them. Now it's your turn. Choose one detail from today to illuminate. A postponed conversation, a request you've been swallowing, a label you used to hide. Do the 90-second ritual. Start small and take concrete action in the next 24 hours and leave a trail for the community in the comments. Write, "I'm integrating none," followed by a concise sentence about your next step. This isn't vanity. It's aligning with people who've also chosen to grow. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs this mirror. If it provided methods, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Here, every week, we transform shadow into a tool and fear into movement. If you want more people to build this mental strength, like the video, it seems small, but it helps the content reach those who need it. And follow the Dark Psyche on social media to continue training between episodes. That's where we have discussions, share studies, real-life cases, and practical challenges for you to apply in the real world. Breathe. The light you ignite within doesn't make noise, but it changes your path. The shadow will keep knocking. The difference is you now have the keys. Here, darkness turns to light. Until the next dive.